Okay, so this is going to be really old school because I'm at school and my program isn't working. So very quickly, the last couple of concepts here on convergent evolution and the biogeographical record. Biogeography is the study of geographic distribution of species, so we figure out where they are and who they're related to that maybe used to live there. Organisms that inhabit a particular geographical location are frequently similar in appearance. Now, why should this be? Is it coincidence? Or parallel evolutionary adaptations that occur in similar environments? So, for example, with Pangea and continental drift, as the continents drifted apart, even though species were apart, they had similar selection pressures, therefore the same adaptations would benefit them. This leads us to convergent evolution, which is the independent development of similar structures in organisms that are not directly related, and they're found in organisms that live in similar environments. Why don't you pause for a minute and take a look at this table right here that shows you the ecological roles or niches that these different types of mammals fulfill in an ecosystem. Moving on down. Isn't this cool? So the marsupial placental convergence. Marsupials evolved before placental mammals, and Australia separated from the continents, the other continents, about 70 million years ago. Only bats and a few rodents were placentals on Australia. We actually see marsupials in the same trophic niches as placentals, and because of similar selection pressures, which I was just saying. We also see some interesting techniques or patterns with island evolution. Organisms on islands most closely resemble organisms on the nearest continent because of common ancestry. For example, Galapagos turtles and finches. The take-home here, convergence is the evolution of similar forms in the different lineages when exposed to the same selective pressures. The biogeographical distribution of species often reflects the outcome of evolutionary diversification. Next. Now, of course, Darwin wasn't without critics. At that time, evolution was not solidly demonstrated. Remember that when we use the word theory in the field of science, it's not the same as if you're saying, oh, well, that's your theory, which more just implies an opinion. And theory, in science, is something that's been tested multiple times, and we've not found an alternative explanation for a question. At that time, there weren't very good fossil intermediates, but now those gaps are getting filled in. We have great intermediates for hoofed mammals leading to whales, reptiles to mammals, dinosaurs to birds, and even apes to humans. One argument is the intelligent design argument. And this is similar to the previous argument. Critics claim that the presence of highly complex structures could not have been the result of random processes. Again, the presence of intermediate forms support evolution and counter this argument. Intermediate forms of eyes and the mammalian ear, a little bit of sight or hearing was advantageous to lacking these senses, right? It would have value. So in other words, these complex structures did not come about abruptly, but slowly with small changes along the way. Evolution actually violates the second law of thermodynamics. The second law of thermodynamics says that entropy will increase due to random events in a closed system. This is one of the arguments against it. Well, true. However, the Earth is continually receiving energy from the sun because it's actually an open system. And this is going to fuel the life processes that organize the Earth. So even though there's disorganization, the Earth continuously receives energy, so there's always energy coming in. I don't know if I accidentally deleted something. Proteins are too improbable. Well, as we see with the genetic code, that universality of how the same sequence of bases can lead to the same amino acids, we can achieve that very complex structure of proteins. Another argument, natural selection does not imply evolution. Basically, critics with this argument are really not willing to make the connection between microevolution and macroevolution, which is the evolution within a species and the evolution among a species. And they'll say that scientists can't test the hypothesis that natural selection leads to evolution. However, as we've seen with artificial selection in animals and crops, this is not true. A failure to make connections between, for example, fish and amphibians is probably more a failure to examine the fossil record. Another argument is the irreducible complexity argument. Critics will look at the complex machinery within systems or organisms and claim that natural selection couldn't have built, if you will, any one part. For example, blood clotting in mammals is a highly sophisticated process involving lots of proteins and a very elegant biochemical pathway. Remember, each part of any complex molecular machinery in an organism evolves as a part of the system as it evolves. Any part of that system that improves function will be kept and eventually become required by that species. Even lampreys, a very, very primitive jawless fish, have a basic clotting